call tonight's meeting to order. Abby, would you take roll call, please?
Sure. Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Commissioner Ligness.
Present.
Commissioner Grindal.
Present.
Commissioner Lorge.
Here.
Commissioner Wright.
Here.
No, Commissioner Hoyt is absent. President Erickson.
Present. If you would, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we've got an agenda before us. I'll entertain a motion to approve or amend.
Motion to approve.
There's a first,
Second.
a second. All in favor? Aye. And we have an agenda. Open forum is next on the agenda. Seeing no one present, we'll just move right past to the consent agenda, which is the minutes from our last regular meeting on June 1, 2026. Anybody want to make a?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we got a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? We got, that one's passed. All right, regular agenda item, 2027 budget. Abby.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Thank you, President Erickson. Members of the EDA, at your last meeting that you held in June, staff presented a budget to you without salary data. And at that time, the EDA said, so far the numbers look good, but you really wanted to take a look at the budget with the salary data included in the budget presentation. Give me just a second to always get my screen situated. I should know by now to adjust that view beforehand. So included in your packet is salary data and a proposed budget to forward on to the City Council for their inclusion into the 2027 budget. I've included it up on the screen there, and it is located on page 10 in your packets. As noted, we talked in the past about standard salary adjustments, and I think at the time we talked about like 3%. This is a much larger than that increase, but that is not because of any increase in staffing. That has to do with a lot more of things like healthcare, the benefits, all increasing as part of the wages that go along with wages. So included in the budget is the wage information, the total budget for $273,400. The EDA had talked about whether or not you wanted to potentially try to help assist in lowering or stabilizing the City Council's levy. The one thing that I would recommend you consider is the one area that we've previously discussed is the planning line item. This is kind of the projects we do. So in the past we've done plans or studies, those sorts of activities. We do have about $20,000 in there that we historically have not been using. So that is one area that you could lower to assist in helping bring down the budget, but I will say $20,000 is a pretty nominal contribution. So staff wants you to take a look at this, and then if you're comfortable, move to approve the proposed budget as if amended if you'd like, and then direct staff to prepare a resolution. I would have included a resolution in here, but I know that same with last year, you have some discussion, and oftentimes they have to amend that a resolution and bring it back anyway. So still won't be that far off bringing the resolution to the EDA in September for the approval. It still would get to the council before their preliminary levy adoption at the end of September.
All
Questions?
right. Thank you, Abby. What questions does anybody have? Does this body want to consider the agenda as proposed, or do we want to shave any off in planning to bring our 27 budget closer to our 26 budget? talkative group tonight.
Yeah, personally, I'm indifferent. I mean, you know, I don't think we're talking about a big dollar, much change here. So, you know, if we were talking about potentially helping offset or reduce the overall city levy, I don't think any, you know, movement either way here is gonna make a big, you know, really move the needle at all probably on the overall city levy side of things.
It will be negligible.
I mean, I like the fact that as a body, over the last number of years, we've built up a reserve that is available for special projects that might come along. So I don't think it hurts us to keep that line item where it is, even if we don't spend it, just to be able to have it for future opportunities that might come up that this body wants to take part in.
I agree. I mean, it seems reasonable to me. I mean, the only line item, if I'm reading this correctly, is the, you know, wages going up to take care of staff. I think that's a good thing to do from a retention standpoint. I know you've hired a lot of new staff, you know, within the last year. We want to retain them. So to me, that seems like a good retention effort there. I would hate to, you know, and that everything else is the same. So going up to the 273 seems reasonable and makes sense to me. And then to Leif's point, having that reserve. So this looks good to approve to me from my standpoint. I don't have any other questions.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I agree.
You agree? Okay.
Yeah. I'll move that we accept it as proposed here for 2027 budget for a total of 273,400.
Oh, second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And we have a budget recommendation.
Great. I will forward that on to City Finance Department. We'll embed that. I think it's already embedded as you see it here into the city's existing budget. We'll get that resolution back on your consent agenda at your next meeting, just so it's formally done. That's just a part of the bylaws that we pass that on through resolution. Frankly, I don't think that we have, and so I'm trying to get us back into a routine of adhering to those bylaws.
Awesome, thank you, Abby.
Yeah.
Looks like we're ready to talk about business subsidy policy.
Great. So included in your work plan and something that has been kind of a priority for the city is just doing policy review and updating policies across the board. A lot of this is to make things easier to understand, but also easier for us to implement. There's a number of different city policies related to financing that just haven't been revisited in some of them 20 plus years. And so you took a look at the business subsidy policy in May or June. I remember exactly which month that was. Included in your recommendations were some pretty minor adjustments, I would say, but you discussed, sure, because I unplugged now it won't. Oh, look at that. Feel like a good day when it actually plugs in and starts. So I did include in your packet underlined, I maybe should have noted that, underlined areas are areas that you asked to incorporate into the business subsidy policy. So projects that create new business or residential opportunities in downtown Forest Lake as defined in the downtown plan. There was concern of what was downtown. You also wanted something in here that helped fund capital investment for existing businesses and industries and some definition there. So we did include in here a proposal that they would increase, so it'd be capital investment in existing or local business or industry when it's increased by greater than 50% of the assessed valuation. So if you've got $1 million building, if it's gonna go to 1.5 million, that would be that 50% increase. And that would be something that we would consider helping fund. As a reminder, this is our umbrella policy. Things could get narrower depending on the type of funding mechanism we use. Projects that resulted in the creation of higher wage and quality employment opportunities. When it came down to new job creation, you want to see at least one new non-owner job. You had a lot of discussion about this number here and owner jobs versus non-owner jobs. And at the end, the EDA said, you know, a minimum of one. We can always ask for more, the more the subsidy is in the future. And you did also want to see 400% of the state minimum wage. You want to see good, high quality, that one or more job be a really good, high quality paying job to consider financing it. We did include in here the Forest Lake medium household income, exclusive of benefits, and the state minimum wage. So 400% of the state minimum wage or 100% of the Forest Lake medium household, excluding benefits, whichever's greater. So you said, let's look at whatever are those higher paying jobs. We didn't really monkey around with that application process at all or any sort of the legal things. You did have some information here about financial delinquencies, if there were obligations to any other government entity. You were concerned about us giving, having a business subsidy. History of noncompliance, there was a lot of discussion about a record of default, breach, those sorts of things. Kind of simplified that as the applicant default, breach, or otherwise been not in non-compliance with agreements. Little open, more, a little less a record, because there was conversation, what is a record? Just in general, if you're in default or have breached any sort of previous agreement, we're not inclined to probably enter into a new agreement for funding. And then we just, beyond that, there was no other amendments. So tonight for your consideration is a recommendation to forward this on to the City Council, because even though this is a policy that you will be implementing, it's also a policy that the council has the right to use as well. And so before we get the EDA's final blessing, I want to get the council's blessing, then I'll bring it back to the EDA for formal approval. Questions?
All right, thank you, Abby. Any questions for Abby? I feel like you did a great job of incorporating our last discussion into this and capturing it. So I guess I personally don't have any reservations with what we have to move forward. Nodding heads. All right, anybody want to make a recommendation to recommend this to City Council?
I'll make a motion for approval as outlined by staff as a recommendation to council.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Nice work. All right, now Elmcrest.
All right. So end of last year, it says in my memo, I just don't remember off the, end of last year, the city entered into a cooperative agreement with the cities of Hugo, Columbus, and Lino Lakes, and Anoka and Washington County EDAs, the Economic Development Authorities, for a study of the Elmcrest Avenue corridor. All the parties agreed to essentially work together to solicit proposals for a study to eventually come up with a design that all parties can agree to for that future corridor. So as a reminder, Elmcrest Avenue is our western property boundary, or our city boundary, and runs from Frenchman Road, that's not what it's probably called in Lino Lakes, but Frenchman Road in Lino Lakes, Hugo, all the way up to the Love's Travel Plaza. A lot of that area is guided for non-residential development and kind of going to become an economic driver in the region, as it's going to be built out to serve as almost like a frontage road to the interstate in the long run. So the cities and the counties have went out, submitted an RF, or released a request for proposals for firms to tell us what they think, and two firms did come back. We did select one that all six of us agreed in the cooperative agreement study group that we agreed we'd like to move forward with. The total cost of the project is anticipated to be $112,000. It was, I would say, more than many of us thought that it was going to be, but we were able to work with the consulting firms to bring those costs down quite a bit. Members of the cooperative have agreed to, verbally at least, on a 50-50 cost share between the two counties. So Washington County would pay 1/2, Anoka County would pay 1/2. The 50% portion in Washington County would be split between Forest Lake and Hugo. And the way that Forest Lake and Hugo would be paying for this is through a grant from Washington County in their pre-development fund. So as a reminder, the county has the pre-development finance fund that can help us with planning studies, just of this sort of to help offset or to help promote development in the future. Those are usually require a 50-50 match. So our grant would be matched by the money in Hugo. Hugo's money would be matched by ours, even though all the money would be coming out of the pre-development finance fund. So in order for this to occur, 2 actions need to occur. The EDA must pass a resolution authorizing submittal of a Washington County Predevelopment Finance Fund grant for the Elmcrest Avenue corridor study, and the City Council must approve a cooperative agreement amendment. I don't have that cooperative agreement amendment for the EDA's review and recommendation. The MOU that we currently have, or the agreement we currently have, says we all agree to work together. We all agree to figure out finances later. Well, now we're figuring out the finances, and we wanted to at least get everybody's buy-in through the bodies that are going to help fund this before that agreement or that cooperative agreement amendment is finalized. So I think that we'll have that could have that cooperative agreement back before the EDA for a recommendation before council, but it may be that it just goes straight to council. The EDA was in support of the first cooperative agreement, and so I think by your support, if you're supportive of this middle of the finance fund grant, that shows your support of the amendment as well, and I can share that with the council. So staff recommends the EDA, tonight I did include a resolution for you, Resolution 08032601, which authorizes the submittal of the Pre-Development Finance Fund grant application for the Elmcrest Avenue corridor study.
All right, thanks, Abby. Just one quick question. So it sounds like Forest Lake is agreeing to pay for this, and our portion would be $28,000, but the funds would come out of this fund. Is there a limit on this fund that, if we spend this $28,000, that it's $28,000 we don't have for other projects in the future?
That's a great question. Chris is here and would be able to answer some of that.
Thank you, President Erickson and members. Good evening. So we do have a limit per year per city, and it's $40,000 per city per year. So you're not going to be quite bumping up against that limit. And as a maximum, we have countywide about $150,000 available for the entire county. We don't have any other projects right now in the pipeline, so this will be the kind of the only thing in the works, so to speak, as we move forward over the next couple of months.
All right, thank you.
The one thing I will note is we do have an outstanding pre-development finance fund grant on the Fenway Avenue property. As a reminder, we updated the wetland delineation and the survey. That work has been complete. We're just finalizing the wetland delineation with the watershed district. Once we get that final invoice, we'll submit for reimbursement, and then the only outstanding out of the maximum 40 would be the 28,000. So we'd still have about 20. How many did you say per city?
40,000.
40.
Was that December?
12.
That might have been last year.
That was. Is it
Okay.
50 per city?
40,000 per city per year. So
40.
you're okay.
Never mind. 40,000 per year per city. So we're good.
So are we in,
We still would have
So we did-
$12,000.
Yeah, because we did that last year.
Yep.
Actually, that application was out.
okay, all right, cool. Yeah,
Is the 28,000 coming out of the EDA budget and then, so it's coming out of the city?
It's going to be a wash to the city. There's no,
Yeah, I understand. Oh, I was just wondering if is it going to show up on our budget as having been an expenditure, or is it going to land on the city side?
it will not be on either budget because there are no funds coming from the city. It's essentially.
Oh, I thought we were paying it and then getting reimbursed. It's just they're going to direct. Okay, thank you.
The county will be funding the money directly to Anoka County as per the cooperative agreement. Great question, though. So as noted in the resolution on page 22, the last whereas, it says you support the proposed project and hereby support the $28,000 grant application with $28,000 grant match from the city of Hugo. I should have put in there with no cost to be expended by the city or EDA, and I certainly can amend that resolution if you'd like before the adoption tonight.
That sounds like great clarification. Might as well put that in there just so it's clear.
Maybe to memorialize the whole situation. If someone comes back and looks and wants to know the accounting and how that all worked out, it can't hurt to add that extra language, I guess.
Jonathan, did you have a question? Okay. Any other questions for Abby? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 08032601, authorizing submittal of the Predevelopment Finance Fund grant application for the Elmcrest Avenue corridor study with the amendment noted by my colleague to the left.
Right. We have a motion.
Second it.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We've got approval. All right, Abby, tax increment finance policy.
Thrilling
Sounds-
stuff.
It's policy night.
But like we just said, the business subsidy is the umbrella policy. This is here are the things we're gonna fund. Now we're gonna start working on specific policies that hone in just a little bit more. So included in your packet was a draft policy that staff worked with the city's finance department on, based on a number of different things. One of them, and a base for us, is what we call the City Exhibit 360. And the reason we say that is there's just a header randomly up in the top right corner of a document suggesting it's a TIF policy that we have from the 90s. We can't tell if it was ever adopted, but it looks like we have used it in the past, and so we say that this might be our base. We also then took that policy and looked at comparable cities and benchmarked against them. So the EDA may not be aware, but the city does have 10 peer cities that we look at when we're looking at policy development, ordinance development. Most of them are like size, but a lot of them are also just like tax base population. Some outliers, Wyoming and Hugo, they're a little bit smaller, but they're bordering us. So Wyoming, Hugo, Rosemount, Stillwater, Elk River, I knew I'd start, Prior Lake, White Bear Lake,
Ramsey, maybe?
Ramsey might be.
Sounds about right.
We're getting close.
Yeah.
I think we got 8 out of the 10, so it's a win, 80%. I'm happy to send them to you if you're curious to know what our benchmark cities are. So we took those, and then we looked at how they structured job creation, wage floor, and investment ratio criteria. And then we used that and incorporated statutory framework from the Minnesota TIF Act. And we include specific benchmark criteria. And I'll go through these. I've actually kind of have just some things highlighted, and we'll kind of walk through what exactly I think the EDA might be most interested in and may want to consider either accepting the recommendation or moving to discuss more or asking staff for additional clarification. So not much in purpose and authority and the definitions. I do highlight pay-as-you-go financing. This is the only financing mechanism we actually define in here. There's lots of different ways cities can use TIF. Some of it's just, here you go, here's money up front, but that pay-as-you-go, you'll later learn, is something that staff would recommend be the only model we consider in the future. Eligible uses and target development, again. So in our business subsidy policy, we say we'll provide business subsidies for anything, but a really broad range of things. This is where we're gonna hone in a little bit more. Industrial and manufacturing development or redevelopment. Research and development, office, industrial, corporate, headquarter uses. Residential development or redevelopment, where it satisfies the but-for test, located within or adjacent to the downtown area, where it expands housing choice. This is kind of where we start to really tailor in. I know when we talked about the business subsidy policy, we're like, why do we have residential in here? Well, now we're saying, okay, we would like to use TIF, and we would like to use TIF where we're gonna, in this one specific, or TIF for residential, in this one specific area, where we know we're gonna get more affordable workforce or senior housing. Commercial and retail uses, yeah.
Do you want questions now, or?
Yeah, that'd be great. I guess I'm moving fast, but I want, yeah.
So when we say the downtown area, are we referencing as defined by the downtown plan, or?
And we could put that in here. That's a great, that was something that we had in the business subsidy policy, but we should carry through into this as well.
Another way to do it is you could actually put it in the definitions.
Oh, yeah.
And then how would you interpret adjacent to? Is that immediately adjacent, like parcel adjacent?
That's a good question, but I think it's important that we don't just limit it to that whatever is determined in the downtown plan or whatever zone is downtown, because I can think of a lot of areas, especially to the south there, that technically is not in that downtown plan or downtown zoned area, that there could be opportunities for redevelopment for some older homes there that are, I don't even know, for example, say the Wells Fargo property, if that might even, because it's south of Second Avenue,
I don't think it is.
so I don't think
Yeah,
that
I can't
property
remember
would
if
be
it was
included.
second to second was the boundary. But we could probably explore a little bit more definition of that within or adjacent
Are we
to.
trying to limit TIF from not being like new residential development? So couldn't we just limit it to like it says, because it says residential development or redevelopment, shouldn't we just say residential redevelopment for TIF then?
I mean,
If that's
it's hard to do TIF on greens, green
It
space, right? So I don't.
Yeah, I mean, everything downtown is gonna be considered
So it
redevelopment.
would be redevelopment, it doesn't need to say,
Yeah,
it
Well,
doesn't need to
maybe,
say
but-
residential development.
I mean, if you think of that southeast quadrant, there's no housing there, right? I mean, it's a restaurant and whatnot. So that wouldn't necessarily be housing redevelopment, because that'd be new
Okay,
development, in the one plan that we looked at. So that's where I think
okay.
it's good to keep that broad.
Yeah, great conversations. In general, I think what I'm hearing is maybe just, let's go back and take a look at how it's addressed in other policies and maybe look at a few different options for you to react to at our next meeting.
I think of, for example, this very unattractive building that we've been looking at across the street for 10, 15 years. That wouldn't, downtown or adjacent, that gets a little bit loose on when you say adjacent from downtown. So would it be more about something similar to what we've done with the storefront thing, where it's more along the commercials area or so? I don't know.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. I can look, cross-reference with zoning districts, because not all zoning districts allow for housing. Just as a reminder, this is also just expanding housing choices. It doesn't say specifically to, but for affordable workforce or senior housing. Generally, TIF for market rate just gets a little, not to say that it's never done, but usually what cities are doing is for market rate, they're using the TIF to write down land costs, to improve the public infrastructure adjacent to the development. So just know that,
So it doesn't really matter, like, for example, Lighthouse Lofts, Mallards, there's market rate housing there that's TIF eligible, but it's because it's separate, it's separated out from the residential and it's more on the infrastructure.
yeah, I'd have to look back at that TIF plan to see if the TIF proceeds, because as part of that project, Second Street was redeveloped. So whether or not the money that was actually, the TIF money that was actually used may have been used, granted, for the public infrastructure improvements to allow for that development. That's a common financing strategy. So even though what this is we would consider TIF assistance for private development when one or more of the targeted uses, I think, why don't we do this? I think immediately or adjacent to maybe need additional definition. We'll look into the peer cities and also how we might also address things like other small area plans, right? We have corridor redevelopment studies, those sorts of things. Those might be areas where we're trying to target that redevelopment.
I was gonna say, yeah, you could say the downtown area, and then within a 1 block radius of the 2 main corridors to like Broadway and 61, I guess, or
Right.
any main corridor that we
There's
identify
some on
for.
Broadway too that might be considered, or,
Blake?
Yeah, you start thinking, so 12th Street, south of Target, VFW, that area, if they
Exactly,
wanted to
yeah.
redevelop that part, that's a pretty commercial corridor to
Mhm.
a point, and then it is more residential.
This is great. I'll work on this language because I think even later in here, we even talk about whenever we talk about corridor studies or along major corridors. So let me play with that language some after this meeting and bring something back for you.
One follow-up to that, Abby, I request, when you bring that back, can you perhaps include a map that shows align with, thank you.
Commercial and retail uses, but only where it's a part of adopted redevelopment plan or otherwise satisfies other criteria development. It results in a net gain of 10 or more full-time jobs. So again, this isn't necessarily our higher wage industrial or manufacturing jobs. We're looking at more service-based positions. And then significantly enhances the appearance, character, or quality of the downtown consistent with the comprehensive plan or the downtown plan. I would assume this, again, you'd want to see expanded along more of your commercial corridors. Or again, our business subsidy already says, I think, along any commercial corridor. TIF, do we want to hone in more specifically, really using this tool downtown?
So, a couple things on that as I'm thinking about our another TIF area that we have is out at Fenway. That Team Vantage or whatever was TIF. That's a TIF project. That is Greenfield, right? It's a new, so that was kind of odd.
But that wasn't commercial retail, that was industrial manufacturing, job creation.
Right, but let's say there's a combination of that, I don't know, but as part of 123 or something like that.
I see what you, yeah.
I don't, it's hard to just put this into like a package that's gonna work for everything. So it's gonna take a little time that's why we're having these conversations, right?
I mean, I think historically the TIF, the different projects in town that has used TIF, it's kind of been a make it up as you go for this project. Would that be a fair assessment to some degree?
Make the policy up as we go? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
historically.
Yes, historically.
So does it benefit us as we're trying to develop this kind of overarching TIF policy to make it as specific as maybe it feels right now? Or is there benefit to keeping it, to Blake's point, a little bit more broad? And I'm not saying it's one way or the other, I'm just asking the question.
I think it generally depends on what the city and the EDA's, goals are. There are some cities that'll say TIF, we won't use TIF. We're just not going to, right? We're not going to use public funds to subsidize private development in any fashion. Then there's other cities that say, you know what, this makes sense. This is a good tool to use, but we know the only places or the only things we want to use it for are X, Y, Z, and really use those tools for the development you want. From my perspective, it can be somewhat challenging sometimes when someone comes in and they're like, oh, hey, can I use TIF? I don't know. We kind of have it for everything. And I'm not saying that that's not going to be okay, but there is a balance of that future revenue and whether or not we can promise that for everything in the future. My personal professional opinion would be we should try to tailor this in along those corridors for the development, either the high quality, the jobs, or high quality redevelopment, or the jobs that we want to see in our community, and then really start to try to get that development by,
Working.
I don't want to say luring them in, but, using the tool in the toolbox.
And that's comparable to like the comparison cities, like that strategy that you're mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, some of them, I'd have to go back and look. Finance did a lot of the actual benchmarking against other cities. I'd have to look at to see which ones do and which ones don't. In another comparable Washington County community of a like size, their TIF was predominantly downtown development. They knew that if they were gonna invest, they're gonna invest in their downtown because that's gonna generate, significantly more tax benefit in the long run than some of those other just, I would say, top of hill commercial areas.
And if it's narrowed where effectively encouraging redevelopment in what we might consider blighted areas or areas that we want to have development encouragement. Whereas if we open it wide up, in theory, the land that doesn't need any redevelopment, it's just a field, it's gonna be a lot less expensive to build on, and we're encouraging people stray away from those areas that we might want to be redeveloped. I will say I'm not a huge fan of TIF in general, but it's a policy the state puts out, and our city competitors use it, so we'd be foolish not to.
Yeah, I know that downtown development is a priority to the city. And I do think that the corridors leading into downtown, Broadway and 61, definitely need some love, and are gonna see it. It's gonna end up happening. I think, we could draft our TIF policy of industrial and manufacturing development or redevelopment. That's that greenfield new jobs, right? We wanna still encourage that kind of development in areas where we don't have it. But then I would say most of the other things should have maybe a geographical radius, 1/2 mile from the downtown area. And we will consider maybe any types of uses in those areas if it's achieving some of the other deteriorating blight, some of that sort of stuff.
So here's another example, not to throw another wrench into it, but, so the old industrial park along the freeway, which I think it's 15th Street where Forest Lake Ford just went in. There are a lot of old industrial buildings there that if part of the goal here is to bring more employment to this city, that is not greenfield, and I think that could be eligible. That would be very valuable. I mean, that Ford project was, my understanding, a $20 million project. Now, they didn't ask for TIF, or maybe they did, and we didn't really have that conversation, but just that one building alone, as you're coming up the freeway, looks a heck of a lot better than what's around it
Right.
presently. And so to be able to try to help redevelop that, again, old business park as time goes on, I think would be also something we would want to do.
I'm wondering if this is more a concentration of, geographical potted areas, right?
Like a small area, like you mentioned.
Yeah, the small area, the downtown or within a 1/4 mile of downtown. I know that's a longer distance in my mind, like 6 blocks from downtown. I could see that 15th Street area, probably the airport business park, because we've historically had these industrial properties out there. And then also too, along Highway 8, there's a little kind of maybe aging business park that within the next several years might have city water and sewer services to it, which could make it some prime redevelopment land. So I could see us maybe honing in on use in the areas zoned for light industrial manufacturing, and then close to that downtown area. The Highway 61 corridor and the Broadway Avenue corridor right now, coming from kind of a planning perspective and economic development, I think that we should probably be looking at some small area plans to help guide the redevelopment through there. We've done that a little bit with our downtown. We've done it a little bit with some of the other industrial areas, and I think that might be more beneficial than saying, hey, old appliance repair over here. We don't really have great design standards. We know we want to see something. We're going to kind of get something. Is it what we'd want to see? Or do we wait a little bit, see if we can use our TIF tools elsewhere in the community, and then maybe expand as we see some interest or more interest? Do you like that approach?
I think so.
I do feel like, there are so many areas, let's just say. But, it is nice to concentrate, not to just leave it really narrowly defined, but to have some of those pockets where we know we would love to see that changed. But our priority has been downtown, and if that goes down Broadway, the downtown, and maybe a few of these other pockets, but if those are the priorities, because then the city and visitors would come in and be like, whoa, wow, look at Forest Lake, looks so cool. That's gonna bring in even interest from, visitors, but other developers, and like, hey, what's going on in Forest Lake? Just like, do you remember when Hugo started doing that? You'd go down off the freeway down that main corridor, you're like, oh, they got it going on around here, you know? And I think if it looks like visibly different in that condensed space than the ones that flow off of where Ford went in and, you know, things like that will very quickly be snapped up. I mean, I'm not saying that would have to, but I mean, it just, you know, if we needed to narrow it down a little bit instead of having it.
So why don't I
Broad.
do this? Let me go back to our benchmark, the language in some of these. See who might have comparable kind of targeted pocket language, right? Not so much the uses, but the targeted areas we'd like to see, and see if we can't maybe tailor this a little bit more, because I think we could say any of these kind of uses, industrial, manufacturing, research, development, of course we want to fund them, right? Like but really where we want to fund the most would be downtown, our industrial areas along corridors. Also, as we get a little bit further down, we start to talk about funding ratios, and maybe we want to say, you know, in these pockets, it's a higher funding ratio than in these pockets. You know, that might be another way to encourage
Yeah, I think,
investment in the downtown.
I think, you know, just from memory, I would guess that the last two TIF projects were in excess of 7 to 10 years ago, being Lighthouse Lofts and Steve Stegner's building. If we were in a situation where we had people coming to us every year, I mean, yes, there's a little bit of talk now about potentially one downtown. I could see where we might want to kind of throttle that down a little bit, but the fact that it's been almost 10 years since our last TIF project in force, like, I don't see it, I'm not too concerned about opening it up as open as we want it to be. It's not getting those requests, so.
Yeah, I think the alternative though with narrowing it to some areas, some, you know,
you can drive-
priority
yeah,
places is you can market that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think that's the upside.
This is great conversation. I really appreciate this dialogue.
The bullet point that says removal of blight, deteriorated, or obsolete buildings, it's the fifth
Yep.
one down. I don't see a definition for that either. And that would be, I mean, those are
Sure.
so I mean, maybe
We can define it, but
obsolete means that it's not holding a business, but the rest of it, I think, is really in the eye of the beholder. It'd be nice.
Well, there's the but-for analysis part two, though, isn't there, that's on most of these that you have to hit
yeah,
those marks?
there are some statutory definitions, and in like a redevelopment district, you have to do analysis of the buildings, and there has to be a certain percentage that are hazardous or substandard, and that's where then you kind of get into that blight deteriorated. But that is a great point, better defining it, even if all we're doing is pointing to state statutes, so it does reduce those. My definition of blight and yours is probably different.
And
Could
I'm thinking it might actually cover a lot of the area around like the Ford dealership or, you
Yeah.
know, an unnamed building across the street from here.
Yep.
Things like
That's
that aren't necessarily in the downtown district.
Well, let me work on this one a little bit more and bring something back to you at our next meeting, because I think I hear everything. I don't think there's anything on this list we wouldn't want to fund. I think it's how do we try to target it to these maybe more specific areas in, you know, or encourage it. How do we make the carrot bigger and shinier and brighter, oranger, whatever it may be for downtown or the Highway 8, or, you know, those areas that are along the freeway. You know, that might be things that I can work on there. Expenditures, how we're gonna spend the money, remove deteriorated or obsolete buildings. So again, when we were talking about the Lighthouse Last project, the TIF money that we may have granted, that was the old City Hall, there's costs associated with the demolition of the structure. The TIF probably could have paid for that as opposed to the construction of the building. Public streets, utilities, which may include write-down of publicly owned land. Soil corrections, site improvements, parking, lighting, landscaping, grading, and land write-down. Generally speaking, we are willing to use the money to get things ready to develop, and to develop a lot of the things that we want to develop are gonna either be public infrastructure, right? Because we want to help reduce those costs, because development is costly and we do require developers to pay their own way, so they might need to upsize pipes or build storm ponds or who knows what they are. But then also maybe some of the pretty stuff associated with it, parking, lighting, landscaping, some of those sorts of things would be the things that we'd want to fund. Thoughts here?
Yeah, you have land develop, or land write down in this number 2 and number 6, and it's kind of written as though it's in the following order.
I will double check that.
And then, thinking about the lighthouse lofts, I think I don't know if there was a land write down, if that's the right terminology for that, but I think there's also, as I understand that policy, there's a back end kind of making the city whole in a sense. So does what we're putting here conflict with what we did there? Because I think what we did there makes some sense. So was that a land write down?
My understanding, and again, I'm not familiar with the ins and outs, I just have kind of been on the edge of that development, is that there was a valuation of the land. We did not charge the developer that amount. And then I believe in the end, we will get a larger lump sum as more the payment of what that land was. So it was, in essence,
Deferred payment?
there you go. That's a really good. So maybe what we do is also include in here deferred payments. But again, I think the hard part is that probably wasn't a TIF eligible. Well, it would have been, because they're using TIF funds in the end to. Let me take a look at that.
Perfect.
I might modify number 2 slightly to say public streets, utilities, and infrastructure. I could potentially see other things that I would be willing to say with the same narrative.
Stormwater management.
Stormwater management, a
Parking
trail
garages.
connection,
Yeah, that's a
parking.
Really great point, yeah.
Yeah,
Public
I mean, I've seen creative TIFs definitely when it comes to Spancrete and trying to get those, doubled layers of parking in where possible if you have changes. Excellent. Moving along, financing structure. Generally, pay-as-you-go is the city's preferred structure and will be used unless the EDA determines another structure is warranted. I would like the language to be a little bit more hard and fast. We will only do pay-as-you-go. I think finance recognize that we want to have some flexibility in here if needed. But generally, it is the least risky type of financing versus some sort of lump sum upfront payment.
So it says unless the EDA determines another structure is warranted, by what process?
Right, there isn't much in there to determine that. I'm happy to take
So
it out.
it's just left up to us to decide then.
You get
whether-
a lot of leeway. I mean, the EDA has a lot of creative freedoms in your marketing, in your negotiation. You have a lot more than the council does. And so I think that there's, maybe it is a small upfront type of thing that you get paid back later. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess my question, one thing about it is, what if the opportunity came up that we, as a EDA, had the capacity to buy a blighted property, so we had situational control? And then as a part of that redevelopment, we, wrote the land down or whatever. So is what we're seeing here from a financing structure, handcuff us at all from?
No, I
doing
don't
that?
think so from a
Okay.
deferred or from a land write-down. No, this is, our business subsidy policy allows us to write down those land costs. So that's just a whole nother tool in the toolbox. You can layer this over that. I think this unless the EDA determines another structure is warranted, possibly it could be, hey, we have a fund reserve, this is a really great project business. We can give you $100,000 in capital now, but we want that paid back later. That one's gonna be a little tricky, because, you know, I guess you have the money to do something like that. It's just whether or not you'd want to do something like that. You guys want
Good
to?
to know we have that flexibility, you know, like if there was some really great opportunity or something, but.
I guess it's just whether or not you want that flexibility built into the structure. You want to say, no, the only thing we're going to do is pay as you go.
Like, I think that it lands harder on staff to say, I don't know what the EDA will do. Because so if the question was posed to you, you would have no methodology to know what the history of this EDA has
Yeah.
done, because no proposals has come to this body for so many years.
Right, and EDAs change over, and elected officials change, and all of those sorts of things. I think, you know, the more that we work together, the more that we're vetting through some of these things. I think, you know, in addition to this policy, at some point, we might have like a fund reserve policy, even just a minor one, a few bullet points at least, to say this is what we'd use it for, this isn't what we'd use it for. And the more policy tools that we can have, the better that I am able to come back to you and say, hey, this is the structure that I think you should consider. $100,000 down payment type of thing, then this X pay as you go, but we'll get that 100,000 back in the end. Those are things that I think in time with all this policy development, it's gonna make it easier. I am 100% comfortable just saying pay as you go. And as a reminder, this is another one of those policies, because agreements are also with the council, that we'll have to go to the council and get the council's weigh in as well. We can leave it like this and see what the council's thoughts are.
I might suggest putting a bullet point after the word structure and just scratch the rest of the sentence. It effectively leaves it the same way, but it makes clear that that's our preference.
So by leaving it as pay-as-you-go financing as the city's preferred structure, it kind of leaves it open that it's not necessarily the only structure, is what you're saying. What do you-
That the only thing that's not, it says it will be used, you know, the city prefers that pay-as-you-go, and it will be used.
You could-
Unless, I mean, if you take all that out after structure, then, I mean, it's a little bit less saying this is what we're gonna use, unless there's something that there's another opportunity, another way to view it. I don't know. We might be splitting hairs here.
I kind
mean,
of
what
prefer it as it is also, just simply for that fact, but then also, what if there was some really unique opportunity? Like you said, we do have flexibility, and we might want to keep that, some other structure that we warrant is a good use of our.
Yeah, but I think what she's saying is when it comes to TIF, she would rather be
Yeah,
a pay-as-you-go, and then have a separate policy that would maybe enable the EDA or future EDA to, you know, put up some funds.
I think that is true, but if we were gonna use fund reserve, let's just say we had a fund reserve policy that said we will only fund pink motels in the downtown area, and we get our pink motel finally. If it isn't written into the TIF structure, the $100,000 we use in the reserve, we might not be able to build, generally shouldn't build into the TIF repayment, right? And so I can see where you kind of want the flexibility language. Can I work on that language a little bit and bring something back? Maybe it's a,
Well, maybe in your research on the other peer cities, what
Yeah.
is something? how
yeah,
are
and
they
this
wording
isn't the
or
first
something?
time. And I mean, I think our intent here was to say, we'd like to do pay as you go. We're putting you on notice.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something else. We want that, maybe there's something else in case, who knows what's gonna come up.
Can I shed some light on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
Just to shed some light on that, where cities have gotten into trouble in the past is by issuing bonds to extend utilities and infrastructure, and then for some odd reason, the project doesn't move forward, or they don't add as many jobs as they had hoped for, or the building isn't as large as it was supposed to be, and now the city's on the hook for those bond payments. And so the reason that you're doing this is to protect the city. So basically what you're saying here is that if we're gonna give you TIF assistance, you're gonna have to pay us twice a year, and then we'll reimburse a portion of it back to you. So that's where this is trying to give yourself some protection, so that you don't get overextended, if that makes sense.
And maybe what we can do, there are other just very standard financing mechanisms. We'll double check to take a look, because Chris is right. There's a few different other types of ways that you can do a TIF project. I think it's gonna come down to usually our fund reserve. And so there's probably a way where we can indicate we prefer pay-as-you-go, but also opportunity to use EDA fund reserve or something like that. Let me take a look. All right, so now we're gonna get into where we will, our actual kind of cost limitations. Financing will generally be limited to no more than 15% of a total project cost for economic development projects. So economic development projects are those ones that we're creating new jobs, right? So either the Fenway Airport Industrial Park, where we've got manufacturing, or in those areas where we said, yeah, we might be favorable to retail commercial, but we want 10 jobs instead of, 10 at the standard market rate. And so that's for economic development jobs, but 25% of the total project for redevelopment. So if we had a project downtown and it was $20 million, we would say we would contribute no more than $5 million to that project. This is an area where I think we could come back with, if it is something that we wanted to see redevelopment in the downtown weighted higher than a different redevelopment area, this is where I think that we would want to note that.
I think the grammar of the word "and" between the two sections really should be an "or," because "and" would imply that they could have both of those simultaneously.
Generally, I can't say always, well, in a TIF project, there's a TIF district, and there's only a TIF district type. It's either gonna be an economic development district, in our city generally, it's gonna be an economic development district or a redevelopment district. But I think we can get that language shorn up a little bit.
Thank you.
How do these percentages for these different categories relate to historical and Forest Lake or other, our peer communities?
I don't have a table of that at the moment, nor do I know enough about our past districts, but I can bring that back as something at our next meeting if you want to see what those are like.
Chris, any perspective?
So, thank you, President Erickson and members. In Washington County, in the 10 years that I've been here, we have not seen a single greenfield TIF district, ever, that I'm familiar with. But more cities are doing redevelopment districts, and the reason for that is because it's always more expensive to tear down a building, throw it in a dumpster, and now you can build from scratch. A greenfield it's ready to go, and so there isn't usually that upfront cost, and it's not typically done. When you get a little bit more into greater Minnesota, you see more incentives provided because they're trying to encourage more industrial manufacturing. I think in the Twin Cities area, it's happening organically. It's not just natural. If you see what's going on along I-35E down in Vadnais Heights and White Bear Lake, they're not offering TIF. Those developments are just happening organically. So we don't see a lot of greenfield TIF or manufacturing. It's not that you shouldn't do it. And in fact, if you do it, you might have some language in there that says our assistance might be limited to the infrastructure that's going to extend into this area that will open up this area for future development, and that they might get a little bit of a break because they get some discount, but now you've got infrastructure to serve that larger area, but it's not going to that developer, it's going to that area, if you will. So you could word it somewhere that your preference would be to do redevelopment districts, and we talked a little bit about that map, and that's a great idea. By state law, you actually have to identify a project area for redevelopment TIF, and you can also have a project area for greenfield TIF or manufacturing as well, so that is a good idea. But I don't see many cities at all doing greenfield TIF. It just doesn't happen. So if you were to focus more on redevelopment and, certainly add some language that you can protect yourself to negotiate how much you wanted to offer and keep back the rest of it for yourselves, for your general fund, for snow removal and police and fire protection, those types of things, that's totally appropriate and up to you. So you don't ever have to give away 100% of it. You can keep some of it back for city services. So lots of flexibility.
Can I just clarify, for the EDA, when you say greenfield development, you mean for economic development projects and developments?
Correct, yeah. We are not removing a blighted property. And earlier, we talked a little bit about what would qualify a blighted property. By state law, you actually need to identify the things in that building that make it blighted, and so you have to hire an architect to go through it and say, okay, we found 10 different things that would qualify this building, or these buildings within this area. So it's not based on just what you see, it's actually a qualified architect going through it and making sure that it meets the state statutes. There was a lawsuit back in probably the 1980s where there was a large car dealership and a large retail business that were disagreeing on what would qualify as a blighted property, and the city got sued for that. And so that's why now you have to have an architect that goes through the building and make sure that there's things in that building that would not be considered a good quality building. There are a lot of reasons, bad roofs, plumbing, and electrical systems that aren't up to standards, or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
So there's very specific things that will qualify for redevelopment, TIF.
Thank you.
That helps.
Yeah, Eric.
Chris, is there any outliers in Washington County that have used TIF more extensively than maybe others?
No, I would say it's not used very often. But where it is used, it's primarily for demolishing a blighted building in the downtown area, like we've done in Forest Lake a couple of times, or in Oakdale or Stillwater. But very, very few cities use TIF countywide.
Thank you.
I think maybe President Erickson's question might have been around too, on, for example, let's say, like going back to Lighthouse Lofts, what percentage have we contributed to that based on the value, did that lay within these? I think that would, at the time, might have been like a $13 or $15 million project, and it'd be interesting to see what our contribution is, what percentage they've gotten back on that increment.
Sure, I can take a look at those and bring that back to you, and then just also take a look at generally those benchmark cities of both economic development, or that greenfield, versus redevelopment, just so you can kind of see where these two numbers lie, because this is the heart of a lot of the policy right here, right? Is everybody wants to know how much, and so.
And the reason, it's easy to bring out Lighthouse Lofts up, because I think really where this thing is gonna end, it's gonna come, they're pay forward ahead of time. It's really, as I look at it, and I think this board it was the ideal project. Other than the street, there was an issue with the street there that we allowed them to reconstruct that, but it's that really the kind of picture perfect, or the poster child of an EDA or a TIF project that has worked well for everyone involved. And so that's why that's an easy one to just always bring up or reference, or want to know how the history of how that all came and how it was agreed upon.
Can I ask, so the Ace Hardware that's going in that area, so that's not TIF at all, that's just bought, but it is, redeveloping essentially a portion of that block? Okay.
Yeah,
The landowner you did approve a commercial incentive improvement program forgivable grant, so there is some public subsidy
Got it.
associated, or
Okay. Yep.
assistance associated, but not a TIF project, no.
Okay.
Yeah, to actually have a TIF project is a long process for you. You've got to set up a TIF district and there's a lot of hoops to jump through.
And generally in a downtown, it would be a redevelopment project, and does 9 times out of 10 is scraping a building brand new. That's the increase in the tax, is really coming down to taking away that lesser quality structure, putting a higher quality
Right.
structure
Yeah.
with greater tax base on it.
Yeah, I think Amira Choice was a TIF project as well, correct?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
Got rid of a lumberyard.
And while that is a great example of how TIF was used and used successfully, I do agree with Blake's assessment of Lighthouse Lofts in how well it generated funds and regenerated the tax, or the tax increased, that it didn't actually just run for the length of time that the district, so if the district was created for 15 years, it's not gonna run that long. It's paying back significantly quicker, where Amira Choice actually took almost the full 20-some years or something that it needed on that one. All right, well, I'll bring some back there so we can have a little bit more of a conversation. So here again, private to public investment ratio, a benchmark of 3 parts private investment, 1 part public. I think that's gonna be maybe changed, just depending on what you hear from those benchmark cities. I think I'll leave that at the moment, just so that's an area that will directly tie to that 15%, 25%. Debt service coverage, so this is the amount of income like a landowner or TIP recipient's gonna have coming in to the amount of debt. They need to have more income coming in to the site than the debt, essentially. Does that make sense, Leif? Did I say
Yeah,
it
so
right?
that 1 to, is that a 1.2 to 1, is that what you're, is that?
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't really see that, but, yep, perfect.
Job creation, essentially, they need to demonstrate the minimum net gain of new jobs. So that's where we're gonna go back to our business subsidy policy and say that minimum of 1 at 400% the state's minimum wage or 100% of the city's minimum wage. Or, not minimum wage, our
Median.
median income, thank you. Tax base impact, so this is another one where generally we're gonna wanna see a result of 1 to 2. If you have a $100,000 project or property right now, or we're generating $1,000 in tax revenue in the end of your project, we're gonna wanna see $2,000 in tax revenue, right? I think that there's opportunity here to explore maybe increasing that slightly, and that might be another one. I'll take a look at our benchmark cities. We'll put a table together, because I think that there could be an opportunity for slightly higher there as well. Oops. Land property price, we're not gonna acquire land, we're not gonna pay for land acquisition or property that exceeds the fair market value by more than 10%. Essentially, we don't want to unintentionally inflate the land market or prices, and we don't want to contribute public funds to a project that's gonna do that as well. Non-speculative development, generally, we're not gonna want to use TIF to support speculative industrial, commercial, or office projects, and we're gonna wanna see some pre-leasing. So right now, it's set at 50%. The idea being, show us that you've got people interested in being here. We don't necessarily wanna fund empty storefronts. You guys okay with that
But
one?
it wouldn't, residential wouldn't qualify for that.
No, just for the industrial, office, commercial. Residential gets a little hard, especially if we would ever be funding condominiums, just because you get into some, little bit of real estate no-nos there, where you're selling interest before land is condominiumized or before it's subdivided, so. We don't want to get involved in that. Ownership commitment, we want to see the developers can retain ownership enough to complete construction, stabilize occupancy, establish project management, and initiate repayment of the TIF assistance. Essentially, if we're going to give John, enter into an agreement with John with a TIF agreement, we're going to want to see that John is staying through this project through the end. It can be common that developments will sell mid-project. That can just get tricky on everyone's ends. This is one of those times where we just really don't want another third party involved. And then minimizing public assistance. Really, generally, we want to have the lowest level necessary to get the project done, right? This isn't necessarily something that we are going to, a tool we're going to use so that a developer makes more money. we need to use the tool to where we can get that development across, started. Project approval standards, I'm just gonna highlight these. Some of this is carryover from the business subsidy policy. The project must be in conformance with the comprehensive plan, downtown plan, and the city code. And then they must be under active city consideration at the time of approval. Essentially, we need to kind of go through, we need to make sure that they fit within all of the city's plans, zoning approvals, those sorts of things are falling in line. Will not be provided to projects that have financial feasibility to proceed without the TIF and will not be used solely to increase the developer's profit margin. That's one of the things already mentioned. Must demonstrate market demand for the proposed project. We might ask for market financial feasibility studies, appraisal, soil borings, all the other stuff that shows that this financing is needed. It'll not be used where it would confer a significant unfair competitive financial advantage over similar unassigned projects in the area, so essential unassisted projects in the area. Essentially, if you've got two projects side by side, we're not gonna grant TIF to one where we wouldn't the other. We're really trying to use this as a tool to get development off the ground. If we've got two projects of like size and like development, we should be using them for both. TIF will not be used where the developer's credentials, past projects, general reputation, financial history, bankruptcy are inadequate in the sole judgment of the city. This had come up also in the business subsidy policy. Essentially, kind of want to stay away from certainly anyone with those negative financial histories. It's not an area we really want to get involved in. It'll not be used to support projects that places demand on city services, operating capital expenditures exceeding those typical for a development, or for similar facilities. Essentially, the whole idea being if this is gonna create an unnecessary burden on the public infrastructure system, we probably don't wanna consider TIF. You know, I can't think of what that is, but this is pretty standard language in a lot of these policies. And TIF will not normally be used for projects that would create significant adverse impacts in the opinion of state, local, or federal authorities. Again, just one of those kind of common things, but we kind of unfortunately have to write them in. And then projects involving the displacement of low and moderate income residents need to address rehousing needs of those residents. If all of a sudden we're gonna help finance a project and we're gonna take out a block of old Forest Lake and redevelop it, we wanna know that we're not necessarily kicking anybody out of their homes in our community. So that's a pretty common thing. And also, generally, I do think rehousing needs are eligible for business subsidies as well, so.
Just a quick comment on that one before that. I mean, it just feels a little open-ended where it says would not normally be used in the opinion of local, state, or federal authorities. I mean, is there a way to make it less subjective?
Yeah,
Because
probably.
there's different governmental bodies have different opinions. And
let me put in here, make less subjective, and I'll find some better words.
Thank you.
Because I think, you know, our version of environmental impact and, I don't know, let's just say like a special watershed district might have different viewpoints. Generally, we still probably wouldn't want to conflict with a special district or the county or state, but I think we can find a way to make that kind of work there.
Thank you, Abby.
The next line down, can we get rid of the low and moderate income and just say displacement of residents?
I do think that that is appropriate.
Yeah.
Generally, yeah, doesn't matter what they're making. If we're displacing people, we want to try to rehouse them. Good call there. I don't have anything else highlighted. The but-for test is a very standard thing. Any TIF, you need to show that if but for this assistance, the project wouldn't occur. And then we kind of just go into application review, TIF district procedures. Some of this mirrors that business subsidy policy as well. And then reimbursement, city costs, compliance and reporting, rights, those sorts of things. Nothing too crazy in there. I really wanted to highlight more than anything a lot of that policy because that is the meat and potatoes of this one. So the great discussion, I have enough direction to kind of come back with you with a couple of benchmarking tables in here that will kind of lead that conversation further to see that we can't maybe get something at our next meeting to pass on to the council, see what the council thinks. Generally, I think our council is supportive of the EDA, and I don't think that they're going to be too far in disagreement, but it's great.
Awesome. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
All right, up next, EDA Marketing and Communications.
All right, in June, the EDA reviewed its 2027 budget, and at that time, you discussed the possibility of expanding marketing efforts that this EDA might want to engage in. And there was some conversation about digital billboard presence, developer toolkits, discussions surrounding around trying to determine if there was an opportunity to conduct some of these activities in the 2026 budget and then again in the 2027 budget. As I mentioned earlier in our budget discussions, we do have an extra $20,000 in our kind of, I think it's under the planning line item, that we could use for efforts like this. Generally, those are for what we've identified on our work plan, but it can be for anything we decide we want to do. So since that meeting, Jill and I have met regarding citywide strategic communication strategies, and a portion that would include EDA-specific activities that could create a developer pitch kit that includes refreshing our Invest in Forest Lake website, updating the digital billboard, our Come Grow With Us campaign, static images up on the billboard right now, and then creating a professional developer pitch deck with supporting print materials. Some of that work could occur this year, and then next year, some videos and social media channels that could help expand those campaigns even further. So your work plan doesn't include this, and but costs could be done this year and next year. So staff believes there's a need, if there's a need to conduct some of this activity, we kind of need to discuss that, see if we want to amend the work plan. And then we will end up having to obtain 3 quotes for service. That's just city financial policy. And so I'm bringing this to you to discuss as a whole to see, Jill is here to chat with you about it. Her proposal's not included in here because we didn't necessarily want to, Jill's prepared if you want to hear anything she has. But we thought we'd bring it to you to discuss.
Yeah, and just to clarify, yeah, so this isn't as an EDA member, it would be from my own business. So just to, I have 30-plus years in marketing and sales and business growth and development, and so I have my own marketing agency, and I think I had said before, I had already been thinking about doing a proposal because I see, an opportunity for some tools and communication resources that I think would be helpful to support. But before I start, it sounds like you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, no, thanks, Abby, and I guess where do we want to start with this conversation? Do you want to share more about kind of some of the bullet points that you were thinking, or does anybody have any initial questions, or how do you want to start the conversation?
I guess my question would be, if you said adding this to the work plan for this year, like what would have to get pushed, or is there like enough flexibility where we could just add it in?
It's a great question. I will say our capacity at the moment, staff's capacity at the moment is already limited. And I think anytime we can hire consultants to do some work, sometimes it's easier. As you can see, I have the work plan in the packet. There are things I thought I'd get to this year by now that we haven't been able to get to. So adding something else in is probably going to push us back a little farther. I would say, when we start to look at what is in our current plan for work table for this year, I would say that, some of the site incentive stuff is probably the areas that already is going to end up getting pushed later. Headwaters 123 has been slightly backburnered. If you get the weekly updates from Amanda Milks, you can see we have development occurring. It's hard to kind of do some of this proactive land development at the moment. And we have to get onto the comprehensive plan. So this is gonna kind of, those two things will end up, I would say, if anything, it'd be more this site analysis and public properties assessment that has been identified.
So Abby, would it be your recommendation if we were to move forward with something like this, that a quote or setting out to bids would only be for the 2026 portion, so that we could time the 2027 accordingly?
Well, I can tell you, in terms of what Jill has and I have talked about, our website is in need of a refresh, and I think our billboards do as well. I think that there's an opportunity to kind of streamline some of the marketing. When the digital billboard came up, we had this very old Come Grow With Us, and Chuck Bolcom, the owner of the billboard company, at very minimal cost, put together a half dozen slides for us and throws them up there every, minute one comes up for 8 seconds or something. I think that there's an opportunity this year to refresh our website, create some static materials that I think we could do. I would say, things like video or social media at the moment, because of the development that is here, I'm cautious, both to the EDA and the council, that we do too much proactive marketing. My offices will not be able to keep up. And that's just in terms of, we can always take on contracted services, but then our service level really does suffer some. We're still a fairly green team. And so I think before we would do too much more kind of go out and get them kind of stuff, we want to make sure that these internal processes are really well oiled. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? I'd say the 2026, so to answer your question, yes, 3 bids we would need. And I would say at a minimum 2026 is not to say we couldn't ask for 2027 stuff as well.
Like an add-on?
As like an add-on, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I think just the one portion of refreshing the invest in Forest Lake, if you look at that work plan, hits on a lot of different things that are already
Yeah.
part of that. And so I think it's important to make this, this should be priority, because it does help with some of the existing work plan that's already in place. When you're talking about marketing public properties, Headwaters 123, all that would be part of that invest in Forest Lake site.
Right.
And so you're starting to work on some of those things that may not get done at the end of this year without something like specifically the invest in Forest Lake page. So the other piece, and this is, I know it's bigger, maybe more outside the EDA's scope, is really how this conversation started was, Commissioner Lorge, to quote you, the city's communication sucks.
It sounds like me.
So,
I remember the meetings.
so I don't, if we're gonna do an RFP on something like this, I don't know if it makes sense to do 2 separate or include that. And I know, Abby, this probably gives you a little bit of angst because it does get out of your circle, and it's more administration and what that looks like. My understanding that you guys had met with Jolene, and so I don't know where that conversation went, or if it didn't go for very far, and staff's direction was maybe just to focus on this initially, or?
Yeah, there wasn't direction to me. I mean, this was just trying to keep things separated. There's a lot in my wheelhouse, and as much as I may or may not agree with the communication style, I would say that there needs some work. But much the same, administration is sitting, Jolene has been here for a while, but she's also sitting with, no offense to her team, a green team that I do think in time is going to be able to do better at communications. But a lot of this is, are we right there right now? And
Yeah,
I can't dictate work for administration.
Right, and
So
plus
that's the
with
tricky part.
likely a new administrator by the first of the year, or a little first quarter at least, maybe that's something we wait on and let that administrator decide what that looks like.
I do think, Jolene and I have talked about it, and I do think that this is something that this city has had as a priority for a number of years. that we do need that new administrator to maybe be involved in as well, because I think it's gonna really reframe how the city's been interacting with the public, and I think that there needs to be some changes. I think that there is some just hesitancy at the moment that it isn't maybe overarchingly more comprehensive. Nothing against Jill's proposal, but I think, you know, a new administrator, I think, can take a step back and say, oh gosh, there's more than just how we're sending out our one monthly email. It's X, it's Y, it's Z. I think Jolene could even do that. I think we're just we're a little strapped to start another new project.
I think, I guess if I'm looking at these two here, the Come Grow With Us campaign is what is the optics on that from someone who is coming up here and wanting to develop or start a business? I mean, I think it's a decent campaign that's being played out now, and my understanding, so regardless of, Chuck's is in negotiations of, new ownership there potentially, and so, but regardless of who owns that, that's part of the ordinance, right? They have to
Yeah.
provide that opportunity for the city to promote the city.
Yeah, and I just think that those images could be updated to better align with the EDA's website. So right now, the EDA's website's investinforestlake.com, right? And there is no tagline or anything on that. That the city's EDA stuff isn't necessarily always the best well tied to the city either. And I think overall, there's probably good opportunities for some comprehensive reevaluation of some branding. I know it's been a while. I think we all, the raindrops and roses and leaves logo, I think kind of carries sometimes, but that tagline messaging, that as good as it sounds, might not. And so I think that there's a way to update the billboard with our website that better ties a little bit together.
So that's part of the campaign. I came up with a campaign that refreshes that. And again, this was just things that, based on the 2025 annual report, EDA annual report that Abby had shared with us a couple of meetings ago, and just by saying, yes, there's a million things we could do with this. This data should just live on a PDF that you might use to talk to people, but there's so much great data in here that should leap off of this page, whether it's on a billboard, but it should be, a strategic communication plan and do something with this. And I've felt like, and there's other components to a larger strategy of communication for the city, which I did not bring here because I'm just bringing the EDA portion. But in terms of resident community communication, there's a whole, and I think they feed one another. There's an integrated plan of how do we communicate more broadly to our community, updates from all of the committees and the council and social and all that. But that's not for tonight. But just to say, it looks like just a slice of what we've been talking about really is, how do we get more people in the pipeline for TIF, for redevelopment, for things like that, and have some of the tools. And I did bring some things. I know we're already at 7:30, so I don't based on time and resources, if people want to see a little snapshot of it, I do have that. But I think that these are things that, with Abby having a team that's fairly new, and if someone does come, you have some resources that you can take. And I think if we're looking at, just even hearing tonight, if we're wanting to go after a lot of maybe even existing commercial properties or something that for redevelopment or TIF or something like that, then we could amend some of these campaigns for that reason and engage with them. And through some of the, methods that you and I talked about in terms of reaching out. So I came up with a new theme to kind of freshen it up, but it's very much differentiating us as Forest Lake from many other cities. Like, why Forest Lake? So I'm just gonna pause there and I can show it to you, or I can send it to you. I know we're at 7:30, so it's up to you all. In
I
what
think,
questions?
on the record, I think our meetings cannot go past 10 or 11, so you're fine on time.
Well, I know.
Always extend that. with a
I
simple
would
motion.
I
prefer
have a
if
short
we
version and I have a longer
didn't,
version
but.
with more context. But I'll let you know that, like, everything that I created was from data from the 2025 EDA annual plan. So I'll show you the shorter version, and maybe I'll just pass around some of that gives you more of the context that I had pulled. And just some of, like, I've played with pitch decks, with infographics, with different things, just to kind of say, these would be really, you know, I'm a visual person. I like to see, what is the blueprint? What would we show a developer? Like, how are they gonna be investing in our growth? And, so I'll just, I don't know, where do you want me to plug in?
You will have to go up to the
to
front.
go in there? Okay.
Before she plugs in though, I'm just gonna show you what our existing Come Grow With Us campaign is, if you aren't familiar. So the Come Grow With Us, that we have a single flyer that's a little bit older that has like 20 hot things about, you know, how we were growing. And this was created 20 years ago when the airport, the Fenway Park area. And when I updated it, there wasn't a lot that had changed in 20 years. But now granted, we didn't have anybody leading development for 10 plus of those. So the Come Grow With Us campaign was really kind of playing on come grow with us, come dine with us, new housing, new families, come recreate with us. Chuck will change these out seasonally. There was one low snow year. There was this one where I was like, please don't. I don't want snowmobiles on the lake. Don't. So it's a pretty, you know, I would say, nothing against Chucker's team, kind of rudimentary. Just get something up on there more than anything. Whereas I would say and let me unplug and we'll pull up the podium here.
Oh.
What Jill's
Do
kind
I
of.
need to plug in this HDMI? Or no?
You know what? Let's see.
That's
I was
cords.
presenting the other night. so-
We're trying to rectify
That's
that
correct.
whole thing too,
But I have my stuff.
Technology at City Hall here.
And,
This one right here.
Chambers.
okay.
You know, she's getting that set up. I would just say is if there is a future transition of ownership with the billboards, I don't know that the new owner will have any, you know, expectation to build these things for us. You know, I said even if there is a transition in ownership with the billboards, I don't know that that new owner will take any responsibility for creating our graphics, you know. I mean,
No, and certainly not, when we did pay, the city, the community development department did pay us very nominal fee for these 8 graphics.
I'm not seeing any,
Certainly, hold on, 1 second, Joe.
oh, okay. I'm like, I don't see
Or
any
Jill.
lights or action coming on here. Well, and I think part of that too is, you know, that would be great if they did, but part of it is that you have it all like a cohesive campaign. So it's, if you're doing social, if you're doing emails, if you're doing the billboard, it's like, oh, yeah, you know, this is recognizable. You don't have different, different things being created.
Did you try this one?
Oh, I did try that one.
And I know.
Oh, okay.
That's okay, I know. And this guy hasn't been turned on for a while, so I might
Oh.
need to plug in your drive.
Oh,
to
well, that's
mine.
fine.
Yeah, why don't we try that?
Wanna do
I'd say
that?
I'd be good with the amount of spend on the EDA's part. I think it's a good thing to do if it's not a burden on staff, I guess, to go ahead and direct those funds that way, so. And I think it fits well under like our planning
Yeah.
and other things that we're trying to do, so.
If you want to, I have a, oh. So know that, like, I just did a few slides, knowing that, so this is super high level, but I had a longer deck that, proposal, I should say, that showed a couple of samples with, you know, these are the detailed, like, data from the deck that really went into it more, but I guess I can do that one if you really want to look, I mean, would you rather have that or the
No, let's
short-
focus on the EDA.
What's that?
Let's focus on the EDA for now.
Well, they're both EDA. I just did a really short, like 5 slides, or do you want the one with a little bit more context of the slides where it has the direct data from our EDA?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. What's this one? So that one was a little bit more of a document, but, so it doesn't look quite as pretty on screen, but here it is. I'll widen it. So basically, and this is kind of a little bit of the look and feel that you'll see is, I feel like we've got a really powerful story to tell, and I think that it's one that a lot of other cities, you know, they've tried to build a story like this. We've got a lot of great assets, and to support long-term growth that they have been working on to try to have some of the things that we have. And we need to differentiate ourselves in that way to make sure that those things are brought to the attention of developers or redevelopers, that we hold high-value assets that developers want, and it's really a great lifestyle here that residents really value. This is just kind of some of the things that I had pointed out, that we've got the assets, we have the location, we have the lake, and we have community pride here and development opportunities and momentum, and we're getting that momentum. You know, we've got our 20,000 residents here, and you can just feel we're sort of at this tipping point now, and I feel like we're at the point where that size of our city matters, where we need to start taking our communication to the next level at the size that we're at, because our residents, you know, expect communication in a certain way that they're used to. And to be a little bit more cohesive, integrated, and professional across the board. So in terms of, for the EDA portion of this, the key audience obviously I'm focusing on was prospective developers and investors to deploy more of a professional pitch kit, which could be used by Abby and her staff, or any of us if we're speaking to prospective developers, to highlight key value demographics that were coming from the EDA annual report, and streamlining some of our city processes that Abby's team has really worked hard to streamline a lot of those internal processes, and really create a polished economic development pitch kit that clearly communicates why Forest Lake is a smart place to invest. So the Forest Lake opportunity here, or the opportunity for us, is that Forest Lake's ready for a stronger story. We have the assets that developers, businesses, residents, and visitors value. All these things: our location, access to great lakes, recreation, strong schools, community pride, natural beauty, available land, and strong local identity. So the opportunity to bring those strengths together into a highly strategic, intentional campaign with maximum impact to equip those decision makers that we meet with the professional, data-rich EDA resources, highlighting those local demographics and the available land, really is the intention for those to get ready for investment, and that's really the vision here, to meet these core strategic goals. So I kind of outlined 4 goals for the EDA portion here, that positioning us as a high-growth destination for commercial, industrial, and residential investment. To 1, attract more qualified commercial, industrial, and residential development interest. So getting more so that it's not 10 years before we get another TIF inquiry or some of these other things that bubble up. And that we proactively showcase available market-ready land and priority development sites, highlighting the unmatched quality of life that we have here that define Forest Lake as a top lifestyle destination. We're a lakeside lifestyle, and not all cities can say that, and many other things. So also trying to save valuable staff time through some highly automated workflows, through using AI-powered solutions, and standardizing some templates if we can. I know we talked about a lot of flexibility in our tip stuff tonight. So, we'll standardize what we can, and try to help out the staff as much as possible with some toolkit type tools that they can use so that, it's not always manual work every single time. So the campaign that I mentioned that I came up with was Forest Lake is a shore thing. That's the update to grab some developer awareness and engage with them. So Forest Lake is a shore thing is a central campaign theme across that connects Forest Lake's strongest identity, lake life, with the economic confidence, institutional momentum, and reliable returns. It's memorable, it's community specific for us, and it just really builds on, that any, marketing medium that we choose, whether it's web, whether it's video, whether it's a PR, email, that can flow very easily across any of those campaigns.
So
And
Jill,
it really hits on one of our top.
so do you see this being an EDA themed campaign, or is this something that's in replacement of It's As Good As It Sounds?
No, I didn't take on the Forest Lake logo as good as it sounds. Although I do have thoughts on, I personally don't care for the white or the blue and green with the maroon and gold sort of thing. But I was specifically matching this as a brand refresh of the Invest in Forest Lake microsite that Abby talked about and the billboards and all of that as a developer piece.
Okay.
However, I did talk to Jolene and Abby about the bigger city website because there's actually a DOJ mandate that all cities under 50,000 residents have to have an accessible website by 2028. So it has to be refreshed.
It's in process.
Yeah, and it's in process, Jolene had said, and so I had just said, if I'm needed for any help on that, I've done many, rebrands, refresh, but I think it's time to think about that. But we have the lake and the leaf drop on so many things. I think that's a whole different discussion. But I think it would be great to have the colors, branded colors look a little bit better together, but that's just my personal opinion. So, but not for this. This is really, I did try to use the lake and leaf in the shore, the O of the shore thing, and use it in some of the branded elements, which a lot of it is related to the lake. These are just drafts, like I told you, but it kind of gets at the look and feel of the quality of life in the lakeside living that you would get here. But what I'm just gonna, and I'll go through them briefly, I'll try to be fast, but there's 6 core messaging pillars that would flow across the various campaign components. The first one is location, location, location. I don't know if we've ever marketed where we are, but we're in a sweet spot here. And I know we know it, where 35E and 35W come together. We're only 30 miles north of the cities, so for commuters or you want to go to a sporting event, the airport, the arts and entertainment, but also we are at the spot where it's the gateway to up north. But guess what? You don't even have to go up north because you can have the lakeside living right here and skip the 2-hour drive up north. So, it's really what I have on this is sort of like could be a social media element. The Twin Cities Gateway is situated between the metro and up north for the ultimate suburban work-life balance. And this is just like a little snapshot, part of a PowerPoint that would be a pitch deck to kind of say, this is really strategically positioned community. And some of those, so those are just elements that I'm just snapshotting for you, just so you can get a little flavor for what some of these things would include. And so the second pillar is really our high-value demographics and economic vitality. So this comes straight from, again, the annual report. All of the things in this, if you can see my pointer there, are the demographics that we pulled from the report. The annual salary of our average resident, the average home value, that 80% of our residents are educated. And that our population is 20,605 now, but it's planning to grow to, 21,000. And I know it's a little bit small there, so I actually just, I'll hand you these. These are just, you can just pass them down, but like this infographic, I'm a visual person, so if I'm being presented a bunch of numbers, my eyes roll back. So I like to do infographics and things that just bring pictures to life, and I can easily understand what's going on a little bit faster. But you can easily see how our land was like 53% agricultural, and we're gonna be shifting that basically to residential. And that, there's only gonna be 7% agricultural coming up. That's huge. So that huge land shift is coming up. So if developers want a piece of that, they need to start jumping on board and invest in Forest Lake. And then, the bottom part of that blueprint is showing, all of those great numbers again about our 80% of, educated workforce and our, average home value and our average salary of our market. So great demographics just in one snapshot. So not that it has to be that infographic, but I kind of like it. The third pillar is really highlighting Abby and her team's really great work of streamlining our developer-friendly government. So putting the processes in place to really make it a one-stop shop that really puts, for a developer, like, hey, we know your timelines and your budgets are, what you track, and that means a lot. So we have a one-stop shop. You'll have a single point of contact when you are starting this process from the beginning to ribbon cutting. And so that means that we're a great partner for you, and we're here for you. And so this little snapshot of a PowerPoint shows like how maybe the process may have been for them in the past, or maybe how our process may have been in the past. But now it's how it's streamlined. And so the social media snippet on the right is really your vision is our priority. So it's putting them at the center. So it's, for me, it's taking a little bit of my, always putting the customer at the center is taking that to the city's point of view now and putting the developer at the center of how do we make sure that we get the right developers in here, and how do we partner with them to make sure that we're going to have the right partnership from the very beginning. And we have the criteria on the front end to make sure that they're a match for us. And then to sell them on why Forest Lake. Again, our unmatched quality of life, lake life without the up north drive. It's our 2,200 acre beautiful lake supporting year-round recreation, 23 parks and trails, strong schools and a variety of types of schools with strong investment and reinvestment in our community and robust civic pride, and then all of our local events,
Yeah. So Jill, these so far, 4 out of 8, are these essentially kind of the graphics you're showing us, and maybe even the verbiage with it, is essentially the pitch deck that is kind of the basis, or is
These are snippets of the pitch deck, but there's 6, these are kind of core communication pillars that jumped out to me as like, these are things that from the annual report were kind of like, these floated to the surface to me as being, if I'm a developer, why Forest Lake? Why should I invest in Forest Lake?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So this information that you've shared with us so far and that you have in this presentation is kind of what you're thinking you would use to, what one might use to refresh the Invest in Forest Lake website, and then also to develop the billboards and
Right. So these are like the communication components. These these are the key messages within the Forest Lake is a Sure Thing campaign. These are the key messaging points, these 6 things. And these little snapshots are just giving you little drafts that I've done of, this could be social media. These are, I have full PowerPoints like in draft mode. I'm just showing you some of the slides from them.
Yeah.
And I've done little videos, little 3-minute videos, and then I'm just showing you little pieces of them. And I haven't worked anymore. They're just like storyboards and things at this point until, if I get the opportunity to work on them. But does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the fifth out of six, key messages would be, we have ready-to-build opportunities. Our city is proactively completed long-range infrastructure planning and offers specific market-ready development areas. So we have key opportunities right now, and then highlighting Headwaters 1, 2, 3, the airport business park, and the technology corridor. And that obviously is on the microsite right now, the Invest in Forest Lake microsite. And then again, just really talking about our partnership tools, that we have tools and incentives that we can work with them on. And so it is SIP, it is TIF, or tax abatement where appropriate. And then just really playing up. We have a great, and that's not here tonight, but we have a vibrant Forest Lake Chamber of Commerce community. Ribbon cutting, networking, local community partnerships. And then, of course, we've got the Washington County Open for Business initiative. So we're just, we're a great partner to work with any new business. So the rest of this is really just the components that would go into like a full pitch kit for the EDA to utilize. And again, so really numbers 1 through 6 are what are on the 2026, that 6,000 that Abby outlined. So the microsite, the billboard, a PowerPoint pitch deck, just a one-pager general informational flyer. I've done a financial incentives fact sheet, so it would cover what does it mean to get a TIF here? What are the requirements? What's the criteria? What about the SIP? What about this? So it's just a 2 or 3 page fact sheet. And then the infographic, and then if wanted, going into 2027, if we budget for that or we end up doing more, we could get into a little bit more if, like you said, if the team is ready or we're wanting to try to get more of a pipeline going, we could do more things that would try to generate more leads, so to speak, more development coming to us with outreach and social media, with video, and we could do some ads and we could do some marketing for like the conferences that Abby attends, getting a little bit more exposure and awareness so that we get some more interest coming our way. And I know Abby and I talked a little bit because, I do come from a corporate background, and so I've not really done the, government stuff as much. And so she's like, well, it doesn't always work exactly that same way for city, but I think from, what you need at a conference or, some of those types of things, like for, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it right now, the C, what's the?
Car.
What's the
Midcar?
What's that?
Mincar?
Car? I'm not sure what you're,
Midcar? The conference that you go to,
the real estate journal?
that must be the one.
Commercial real estate?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, like what, in terms of like, before you go, what do you, like, how are you getting appointments while you're there? How are you, like, that's,
So I think the one thing, thank you for this, Jill. I guess personally, I like the idea of what's in the 2026, the bullets. I don't know that we're ready for like the video teasers and YouTube, kind of to Abby's earlier point about just is the team ready? I had a conversation with Jolene earlier today, and just kind of remembering as we think about the EDA allocation of time, or the allocation of time to the EDA versus just planning and keeping up with all that's going on in community development. I think this is all great, but probably just a little bit ahead, is how I'm feeling, of where EDA staff is today. So I guess, I don't know what direction staff needs around any of this, or EDA, just other.
So I think the direction that staff needs is to know if the EDA wants to do some work in updating some of the marketing materials, at least this year. We, kind of feather this into the work plan for the rest of the year. Like I said, I think that there is opportunity for website improvement and alignment with the digital billboard. Maybe some static stuff that goes kind of hand in hand with that, especially once our website's updated. But, you know, some. I'm not gonna lie, I love It's a Sure Thing. I think that's really clever. I actually looked it up. It's not trademarked at all. So be
Yet.
careful.
And I created it, wasn't even ChatGPT, I promise.
You know, there are some constraints. Jill and I have talked, if the city EDA would want to move forward and we did get 3 bids and we ended up working with Jill, Jill would have to step down from the EDA unless she wanted to do pro bono work. It's something we can talk about. The EDA has tax exempt organization too that we can, you know, talk through potential public donation of your time and that work. Otherwise, we do have to go through bids, and that's going to take a little bit of time for me. I'm not going to lie. Like right now, I had to look. Early August, the ability just to kind of go out and try to find like proposals, right? So asking a few other people for a comparably sized proposal for exactly kind of the same thing is going to take a little bit of time.
Is there not some dollar amount that your threshold, if you're below, that you don't have to go out for RFPs?
You don't have to go for RFPs, but best practice is no matter what the dollar amount is to get at least 3 just quotes for service.
I understand that, but I've been sitting in these EDA meetings for 15 years and having some out-of-town consultant come up here and try to tell us what we need to do here. You have someone that's grown up here, lives here, and this is exactly the messaging I think we need to do. On something on a $6,000 deal, I just don't know if we don't have to legally go through an RFP.
I don't think it's an RFP, but I will also just say, just because of the conflict of interest, I do think it would be recommended that we did get other quotes. I unfortunately, and I mean, Jill and I have talked about this, unfortunately, I don't like to be in that position, but we don't necessarily want to have sole source contracts with anyone who is working on behalf of the city. That just falls under public conflicts of interest.
I'm sure there's examples that we're doing that already. I mean, I don't know. Well, if that, regardless then, if RFP is the preferred or the best practices, I think that for sure the first 3 of these things is kind of a no-brainer for us to move forward. And I don't know if it's a subcommittee of this to help you, Abby, to make this thing move forward, to kind of review those RFP. I don't know.
I don't think it'll be too hard. You know, the website we have is not through the city's website. It's Wix based. I think any website update company we can probably find that could get an estimate for that and some static associated billboard. I don't think it's going to be too hard. I think it's trying to get like for like to compare more than anything. But that is if all the EDA, I mean, I hear you all say you like the idea of kind of refreshing. I've heard many of you, I guess, say you like the idea of refreshing the website and trying to have our digital content aligned. See the benefit there.
Yeah, and I guess like piggybacking off what Blake said, I think if you just go to companies and say, can you give us these 3 and your quotes for them, you can get 3 quotes for those 3 bullet points, and it probably will be Jill that has the most favorable pricing, I would think, because it's pretty vague otherwise, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's a good
unless
idea.
either that or you quantify, like, what are you expecting from a digital billboard campaign? Is it 8 slides? Is it 15? Is it, come up
Right.
with some parameters there? And yeah, I guess I don't know how you quantify a pitch deck, so.
It's really, yeah, I mean, it's really not that hard. It's just another thing, right? And so, I can get it done. I might not be able to get it done for the next meeting, but this is something that if this is a priority for the EDA, I certainly can work it into our 2026 work plan.
Does a no quote count as a quote? If you send it out to 3 people and 2 come back no quote because it's not worth their time, does that count as you having gone out for 3 quotes?
I think so. I think you have to at least make an effort to obtain 3 quotes, but I can double check with finance and legal on that.
I would imagine, well, depending upon who you go to, this might not be a big enough project for anybody to want to bother with, and then you'd have your no quote, and there you go.
Yeah.
I'm sure this isn't, it wouldn't be appropriate, but, I mean, I have plenty of marketing colleagues that I can say, do you want, and get 2 other quotes.
I can get them. I don't think that you should.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay.
I mean, I just know plenty of people that could quote it, but, to try to help out. But anyway, but yeah, it doesn't seem like it would be a good
I
thing.
think the maybe even a bigger decision, longer term, is, I hate the idea of potentially losing you on the EDA, and so that's another thing to consider, and I know you have, because, we value your input here, and so.
Why don't we do this? Why don't Jill and I follow up with one another? Maybe that there's an opportunity to break the project out some, see how much Jill would be comfortable as an EDA volunteer to help with. And then we can start to talk about whether or not, I know that Jill wants to do this work for us. I also don't want to lose her as an EDA commissioner. So seeing where we can walk that line, and then at least at your next meeting, provide you with an update or potential proposals to compare.
Sounds good.
Can I make one comment
Yeah,
to that?
please.
Just to exchange with that.
Yeah. Please.
I would just like to, Blake, Mayor Roberts, in terms of your, larger picture on the, like you brought up earlier to Jenny's comment, and we've talked about it before with broader community communication. And as I stated, I do have, this is just a slice of a vision of communication. And it might not, maybe it isn't next year. I don't know, with the council, what they think, or whoever, if it's the new city administrator that comes on. But whether I stay on the EDA or back off to be able to do that, and I have mentioned this, personally, so just to be transparent to Blake, to say, I feel like I love being on the EDA, but I do feel like I could better serve the community to be able to help enhance our communication, to be honest. I mean, I love being on the EDA, but when I look at the big picture and this vision, that's just how my brain works. I can't help myself but I am always strategizing and thinking well, how could we do this better, and how could we get this message out? And so that's what I put on paper and put down. And so you haven't seen that whole thing, but it's, if I would be able to do that, and however that would be presented, that's how I could best serve this city. And so from me personally, that's what I would like to do. Whether or not I'm able to do that, I'm not sure. So however that plays out. So
Yeah,
I'll just leave you with that.
Yeah, and I think part of that's gonna be the next city administrator, probably ought to have a voice
Right.
in that journey and
I understand that
be a
fully.
part
Yeah.
of that. So it'd be
I would, if I were them, I would want that too. I understand that, but I just wanted you to know how I felt.
yeah. Thank you.
What my passions are for the city no matter what, so,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, updates. Abby.
I have just one update. I believe that it's been since the last EDA meeting, but the city council enacted a moratorium on data center applications within the city of Forest Lake. So moratoriums allow us a 1-year pause. This wasn't necessarily for any reason bad, other than staff had identified that while we had been actively marketing for this type of land use, and we had set it up very favorable for these types of land uses to come within the city, there are areas that staff believe we should take a look to see if we need to rein in our standards somewhat. Plain and simple, we don't have site-specific design standards or use standards, anything regarding noise, buffering, water usage, some of those things that would be customary when we look at different type of land use users. So the intent of the 1-year moratorium is to reassess, define data centers because it's not defined in our code. Determine what kind of appropriate or zoning districts they would be, and then appropriate standards, if at all we want to see them in the city. So I have changed our Invest in Forest Lake website to remove kind of data centers, just the word data center from the Headwaters 123 listing right now, just to show that we're just not actively marketing for that land use. And also I have shared that with Connexus Energy as well. So just so that we aren't kind of in that pickle of now all of a sudden EDA is marketing for something that the city wouldn't even allow at the moment. I'll keep you guys posted on that update. One other one I just have for you is on the dais, or I handed each of you, is the Minnesota Paid Leave Acknowledgement Form. If I could just get your acknowledgement that you received this document. If you have questions specifically, all I need is your, if you're on the council, you already signed it or you'll sign it in a different fashion. It's just the EDA members tonight. All I need is the acknowledgement form, so the other details, if you have questions, Wendy should have contact information there, or else we can get that for you. Do you have any questions for me? Great.
No.
Oh, I will also just say Nanette sends her regards. She was unable to make it this evening.
All right, thank you. Chris, anything from Washington County?
Thank you, President Erickson and members. Just a really brief update. If you remember back in June, we brought to you the concept of the Opportunity Zone program. That application was submitted to the state of Minnesota. And now we're just waiting for them to approve it and make the recommendation to the federal government. So that should happen at the end of this month. And if all goes well, we'll make that list and get submitted to the federal government. Once we're on the list, we're in. So keep it posted.
Fantastic, thank you.
Can I, just to follow up on that, is there, is it strictly just the governor, or is there opportunities for this board or council to reach out to the state to recommend, like, I guess just sell a pitch to why we think we need or would like to be considered?
President Erickson, Mayor, if I could, I'll highlight the program as it's set up from the federal government. They're asking the governors from each state to nominate the, I think they can only have like 25% of the eligible sites in their state. So the governor is by federal regulation required to name those states. It doesn't mean that you couldn't call the governor's office and you know, do a little bit of lobbying, if you will. But
Or
I think
local
once
legislatures to then reach out to, you know,
it won't go through the legislature, unfortunately. It's just the governor's office. So DEED is the agency at the state of Minnesota, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, that's overseeing it for the governor. But it's actually the governor's recommendation that goes forward to the federal government. But feel free to call.
so you don't think that a local legislature would have some, you know, be able to, you know, suggest or highlight us as that, so we have, you know, happen to have one of our representatives is, happens to be the same party as the current governor, maybe that would, I don't know, just,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's pretty black and white, I think, in
Okay.
the process, and that's how it came down from the
Okay.
federal regulations to the states. And so, and I think honestly, you know, the states realize that there's a lot of good opportunities out there. They just have to make sure that the ones that they select will actually, you know, see some developments happening. So that's kind of where the process is. Thank you.
Blake, I will note, I had thought of this recently as well. I mean, Chris is not wrong. Like, the governor gets to make the recommendations, and there's only a certain percentage of counties, and who knows if there will be more counties that apply than could be. And I don't think it might not, you know, it might not be bad for you in your capacity as mayor, or Leif's capacity as EDA president, to maybe give a local representative a call and say, hey, are you golfing with the governor anytime soon? You know, just, if there's an opportunity to mention it in passing.
What is that deadline, or when will they make that decision, or do they have to make it by a certain time, or are they gonna make it?
By August 30th, the state has to submit the list. And I think starting September 1st, the federal government will take that list and authorize it. And by October 1st is when the federal fiscal year starts. It becomes a program.
Thank you.
Right. All right. So So Nanette's not here tonight. I'll just mention, we had a great golf tournament last Monday. Several members from this body and staff were participated in that. It was hot, but fun. And so it was always a great event that the chamber puts on. So I'm really grateful for the work of all the volunteers there. And then coming up at the end of the month is a very fun community event, and that's Lake Fest Street Dance. And so just another opportunity for folks to come out, support local businesses, and build community with one another. So really looking forward to that. The chamber's a significant part of as well as several of the business owners in town. Any other updates from other members of the body? Seeing none, I will say that we're adjourned to day 10. Have a great night.